Since first bursting onto the scene of September 2022, Victor Wembanyama has dominated the basketball talk of the 2020s and even the early 2030s. I mean, rightfully so. He was the French League's best player as a teenager, won the NBA Rookie of the Year, led the NBA in blocks, and was a first-team All-Defensive member at 20 years old. I'm 22 years old, and I'm scared to call the doctor by myself. Victor Wembanyama simply had one of the greatest rookie seasons in history. If we compare just his rookie seasons alone, it's easy to put him up there with all-time great rookies like LeBron, Shaq, and Jordan. But the foreign dominance has overshadowed a certain American prospect, a man that also as a teenager dominated headlines. The most hyped American prospect since LeBron James himself, Zion Williamson. Zion once seemed like a shoo-in for the next face of the league. Yet when we talk about who's going to define the NBA closing out the 2020s and open up the 2030s, he's not in that conversation with Wembanyama or even Anthony Edwards. Now, the former #1 overall pick is heading into what's going to be a career-deciding year. This might just be his last chance to prove how good he can be. So what happened to the single most hyped prospect since the kid out of Akron, and does he still deserve to be in the face of the league conversation? Like many great collegiate talents that came before him, Zion's hype was drowned out due to the injury bug, and for Williamson specifically, his weight and stamina also had major questions since entering into the league. A torn meniscus eliminated the majority of his rookie campaign. Next year, at just 20 years old, he averaged 27 points and 7 rebounds per game. He became one of just 3 players to score 27 or more points per game at just 20 years old. The other two being Luka Doncic and LeBron James. But instead of following up on this historical season, a fracture in his foot made him miss all of 2022, and in 2023, he put up great stats, made an All-Star game, and only played in 29 games due to a hamstring injury. At this point, his health and his conditioning over the offseason would start to look like Ben Simmons making threes. We would hear that he is healthy, hear him or his trainer talk about his diet, and suddenly Zion would be so back. And then he would miss significant time where at one point he was weighing over 330 pounds. This is prime Shaquille O'Neal weight. For reference, Zion is over half a foot shorter than the Big Diesel, so it seemed like it was it. Zion was going to be on another list of would have been great if they could remain healthy and in shape. Enter into the 2023-24 season, Zion's redeeming year. The Pelicans forward would average 23, 6, and 5, and that doesn't really pop off the page, but the eye test will tell you otherwise because Zion quietly had the best year of his career. First off, he played in 70 games. He made it through the NBA season, and he showed off that physicality and athleticism that we saw when he was a teenager at Duke. Second, last year's Pelicans won 49 games. This is their most wins since the Chris Paul days of the 2000s. And the eye test backs up Zion's play. The biggest thing that can get missed when looking at his stats is his leap in playmaking. The Pelicans lacked a true playmaker on the roster, and their roster construction is a topic of its own. But without that dedicated playmaker, Zion was the one that stepped up. Compared to years past, he had way more poise, attacked and handled double teams better, and he ran the pick and roll better. He had a career high in assists while keeping turnovers per game down. He had the 12th best assist percentage of all non-guards, and he still shot 71% at the rim, making him a dominant inside force. According to NBA.com, Zion's .94 points per possession as a pick-and-roll ball handler places him in the 70th percentile. And this is actually a slightly higher PPP than Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic. And while he hasn't qualified in the last few seasons, as a roll man, Zion was still around the 60th percentile when coming off of the pick and roll in years past. I wouldn't call Zion an elite ball handler or a roll man in the pick and roll. However, he is in the club of just a few players that can do both and do it really well. Just look at his play-in game against the Los Angeles Lakers in what I think was Zion's awakening. The 23-year-old put up 40 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists. He was by far and away the best player on the court this game, and especially as it went down the stretch, he took over the Pelicans' offense. This is the game that we were promised with Zion. He was dominant on the inside, he dominated the boards, and he showed off his playmaking skills while having his moments on defense. But unfortunately for him, the remnants of the past surfaced and he left the game and missed the playoffs due to an injury. So what does all of this mean going into the next season? This upcoming season is going to be a defining year for Zion's career. Another injury will put him fully into the what-if conversation and show that him playing 70 games last year was a fluke. However, if Zion can remain healthy, keep that same playmaking leap he made, take a bigger leap on defense, and maybe just be a little more aggressive on the inside, we're talking about an all-NBA team caliber player, and there are two reasons why I believe he can reach that this season. Recent images have gone around showing that Zion looks thin at a youth basketball camp. The former Blue Devil looks like he's in the best shape that we have seen him in his career. Assuming that this is true and not just photo magic, it gives reason to believe that he can avoid injury and make it through the entirety of the regular season. Although I will question if a thinner Zion can be just as dominant on the inside, or if he's going to have to show off more levels to his game. But the second and bigger reason why I think he can come back even stronger this year is the Pelicans roster construction. Last year, the two stars along Zion were CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram. The more interesting of the two being Brandon Ingram, who in the play-in game against the Lakers was benched early in the fourth quarter for Herb Jones. Ingram would never come back for the Pelicans even after Zion was injured, making many think that this would be Brandon Ingram's last game for the Pelicans. And this whole offseason for BI has been surrounded with trade rumors, and that's compounded by the fact that he is going into a contract year. But speaking on the court, Ingram may also not just add that spacing that a Zion-focused offense needs. Ingram led the Pelicans in assists last year while scoring 21 points per game. However, he shot under 4 3-pointers per game while shooting 35%. Zion doesn't have and will likely never develop a full outside game, which is fine. We've seen stars win with this before. But Ingram being just an average 3-point shooter is a less than ideal superstar pairing. At the very least, CJ McCollum did have a career year from 3 last year, and Herb Jones as well as Trey Murphy are also elite 3-point shooters as well. Zion actually had a higher net rating with Jones and Murphy than with Ingram and McCollum. But now the Pelicans add in DeJounte Murray, and that just might fill the hole that the Pelicans have been missing for a few years. DeJounte Murray has been a good defender for the majority of his career, but last year was a career year for him scoring-wise, scoring 22 points per game on league average true shooting. He also had a career best from 3, making 2.5 shots per game at 36%. This is very average, but 7 attempts per game commands respect from the defense. Murray is also a true playmaker, something the Pelicans have lacked for the last few years. And the last time when the Pelicans had a playmaker of this magnitude, his name was Lonzo Ball. When Zion and Lonzo last played together, Zion averaged 27 points per game and was an all-star player. DeJounte Murray is a slightly better Lonzo Ball. He may not be the generational passer that Lonzo is, but Murray is an elite defender, shoots at a similar rate, scores at a better rate, and is now the 4th player on this roster to score 20 points per game or more last year. Even if not all of them can eat in one night, having a roster where 4 guys can give you 20 per is always going to stretch the defense thin. But the big question is going to be, can they produce when the shots aren't falling? Murray is a great defender and can pass well. Zion can be an elite off-ball down-low defender when he chooses to be, so the question is really about what the other two can do when they aren't scoring. DeJounte Murray may not have been the biggest offseason move this season, however, the Pelicans' trade for him was a bargain of his actual value, and he might just be the perfect model of point guard to go alongside Zion Williamson. So when you add in the 3-point shooting of guys like Jones, McCollum, and Murphy, and you give Zion a new playmaker in DeJounte Murray, on what is still a generally pretty young roster with a good head coach in Willie Green, you have the recipe for a breakout season from Zion. Ingram is still a good player to get value from in a trade, or if he can adjust his game to add in more spacing, he can perfectly complement Zion. For the first time in a few years, we are seeing a Pelicans roster that puts Zion in the forefront. If Zion remains healthy, if he can remain that passer that we saw last season while being dominant on the inside, and if he can add on to the defensive prowess that people have talked about since his college days, then I think he can become an all-NBA and even a dark horse MVP candidate. If what we saw after the All-Star break and in the play-in game against the Lakers rings true next season, if Zion can remain thin, quick, but strong, we could see a high-tier Pelicans team, and I think Zion is going to be in perfect position to define the young star of the NBA.